Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best CEOs and investors to help you scale your company from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is Eric Carrasquilla, the CEO of Vendavo. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Glad to be here.
And you are joining from the Bay Area, from San Jose, if I'm not wrong, correct?
The San Jose office, straight from my kitchen. And we were talking about this earlier. Normally when I'm out on Teams, the background is blurred. So realized the background wasn't blurred here. So I'm scrambling around cleaning up in the background here. But yes, coming out of San Jose.
That's awesome. Thank you for hosting us at your home. So everyone is feeling that this episode is much more cozy, from CEO to CEO or from CEO to future CEO across the world. So I appreciate you making the time again. But Eric, you have an impressive resume and an impressive position today as well. So walk us through a little bit more about yourself. Let us know more about you.
Yeah, so I would describe myself as a recovering product guy. If you look through my background, number of different companies in the enterprise SaaS space over the years. And one of the things that I've found is that the skill set within the product realm or the product profession actually lends itself pretty well to a CEO gig. So that process of getting clarity around vision and where and how you compete and why you'll be successful, how you operationalize that in what you build, buy, and partner, how you monetize that and how you go to market. It's a lot more similar than I would have thought coming into the role.
We will get back to the pod in 1 minute. Let me just tell you that I'm glad to announce that this podcast is sponsored by the web agency WebTech. WebTech are specialists on getting customers to companies. They are booking 250 meetings a month to their own sales team. And their business strategy is to teach other companies what they do for themselves. I'm very excited to announce that I've agreed with Pontus, the CEO of WebTech, a special advantage to our listeners. Our community have now access to a pre-designed suggestion on how your website could be improved and or free trials for both SEO and digital marketing. Oh, and by the way, we are working with them too, and I'm impressed by the results. You can do the same. You just need to go to trywebtech.com/Mike, trywebtech.com/Mike, and tech is without the H, just TEC, and tell them you are a listener of the show. Now, back to the pod.
That is super cool analogy to start with. Tell us more. How did it go for you to join as CEO of Vendavo? What is Vendavo about?
Yeah, so maybe a little bit about Vendavo first and how I ended up getting here. So Vendavo, if you look at what we do and why we're here, we're the commercial operating system for the world's most profitable manufacturers and distributors. Big part of why we're here and value we're doing for customers is helping them win by unlocking profitable growth. So what does that mean? And it breaks out into 3 areas. We help them find it, grab it, and crush it. So on the find it side of things, think of using AI and analytics to shine a light on where you're leaking revenue and margin. And more often than not, this comes from the pricing realm of decisions you're making up and downstream. So this is one block. The second block is around digitizing and automating workflows in pricing, how you're doing incentives for channels, and how you're doing quotes. And then the third piece around crushing it is to say, how can we help our customers do the first 2 things with quicker time to value and lower risk? So this is a lot of industry-specific stuff around playbooks and quick starts. This is around the partner ecosystem that we have. And this is around the focus that we have on outcomes and customer success. So Vendavo's been in business for probably the last 20 years. Racked up a pretty impressive list of customers where we're going through and helping them find, grab, and crush that profitable growth. So how I ended up in Vendavo wasn't really looking. the role that I was in prior was a division president within a larger company called CSG. And I kind of went back and forth on, hey, I'm a product guy. Do I want to do the CEO thing? I said, well, if I'm going to do the CEO thing, there's a few, I guess, decision criteria related to it. Mm-hmm. First one has to be a domain that I get excited about, that I feel makes a difference. And for the space that Vendavo's in, it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. And if you look at a lot of companies right now and the mandate around profitable growth and, hey, where can we find more points of margin? That's an important thing. Absolutely. The second piece was around the type of challenge and saying, look, I don't want to come in someplace and just kind of hone the stone. I want it to be something where the imperative is grow, build stuff, scale. So not two guys in a garage or two people in a garage or $1 zillion company, but something where there's an impact related to it. And then the third piece was around the investors and people that weren't just spreadsheet jockeys, for lack of a better term, but people that understood the domain, had real kind of passion and energy around it. I said, well, if those three things are true, yeah, that's something I'm interested in, but that's, something like that isn't going to drop out of the sky. And it kind of dropped out of the sky. And here I am at Vendavo.
That's amazing. And something that I immediately like about the way you introduce Vendavo is that you focus on two very specific industries. You also articulate the product as kind of the commercial operating system, and the benefit, as you said, it's quite aligned with what the market is valuing now, which is much more profitability. Of course, profitability and growth is amazing, but you definitely need to use the resources well at this stage of the market. So were you attracted also by that kind of value proposition? Because I assume you, after your first 7 months, if I'm not wrong, as a CEO, I'm sure you are not changing everything already. So I'm sure that this pitch was there when you joined it. Or maybe I'm wrong.
It wasn't. And actually,
that's awesome.
Yeah. When I came in, one of the things that I definitely got the PhD course on, the CEO in the prior company that I was at is a master communicator. And one of the things that he beat into me early on is that articulation of like, hey, what do you do? Why are you here? And I was going through, even before I started Vendavo, because I was familiar with them before, of like, hey, what's the bigger thing that we're trying to crack here? And I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is a CMO at BNY Mellon. And she went through and she was talking about how they articulate for this 150-year-old bank with zillions of products, like what they do. And she was, I'm trying to remember exactly what she said, but it's like something related to your money. Move it, we keep it safe. And there was something else around there. I'm like, oh, I really like how that encapsulated. And she's like, yeah, we came up with it really quick and like on a shoestring budget. And I'm like, what was that? She's like, yeah, it took like 6 months and it was $300,000. I said, cool story. I don't have that time or that money. So went back over the weekend, banged out an initial version of it, and then have been going through and iterating past that. And what I like about it is, and this is a philosophical thing with me that I've learned over time, really important to get it down and then get it clean. While you'll see iterations of how we go through and wordsmith that and the different word choices that we use, I found it as a really useful framework to explain not just what we do now, but as we've laid out what we're doing over the next 3 years, right. You can see connective tissue in each one of those lanes, the kind of analytics AI thing, the digitization piece, the help me do my job faster kind of a thing. So yeah, that was one of the things we put a stake in the ground on really early. And then once you've put that stake down, then it's iterating with customers, partners, people internally, and actually got a lot of great feedback from folks. And I was also really lucky that we had 2 face-to-face advisory board sessions and 2 user groups within my first 90 days. So it's like, okay, get that stake down and go through and riff and iterate from there.
Yeah, and something that I like about also the kind of almost brings a methodology to find it, grab it, crush it, right? And it creates curiosity and spark, and it's very action oriented, right? So you almost want to tell me more about that part as a customer, as a partner. That's really awesome to put it together well. Well done. Articulation, being a master communicator as a CEO, very good insights. What else did you work on during your first 90 days as a CEO? What do you think has been what has worked well for you that could also be working well for other CEOs on the call?
A few things I call out. The first one is around clarity. So I had a mentor of mine go through and say, I'm going to paraphrase what they said a little bit, but it's unclear priorities breed unclear outcomes. So first job, before I even started, it's around cutting through the noise and defining what really matters for companies, customer, and teams. And one of the things that I've found that's a really helpful framework is shamelessly stolen from Mark Benioff, which is V2 Mom. And there's other ones, OKRs and different things, but they all center around the same thing of, hey, you may be wrong. Don't be confused. What are the top priorities? And when you're going through and articulating that, be able to do it in such a way. This is another thing the CEO beat into my head of like being able to click, double click, and triple click. I think one of the things that folks get wrong is either just doing the click and it's too high level and what are you talking about, or way too detailed and you lose everybody on what the bigger picture is. And V2 Mom's a super helpful mechanism to get clarity, particularly on the method side of things. The second thing that I'd say, and I kind of referenced this earlier, is around the need for speed. And so never did I ever, or any CEO say, man, I moved too fast on that, on a hiring decision or a personnel decision or something else. It's always like, God, we waited too long. And speed isn't about rushing. In my humble opinion, it's about decisiveness. And while you're overthinking things, the clock doesn't stop. And what I've found in scaling up, the slow decisions, often those are the worst ones. I've found it's much more effective to like get that stake in the ground and start to iterate. So then you get to the right decision more quickly. You failed 2 or 3 times and got to the right one quicker than if you stared at your navel for 9 months.
Good point.
The other thing that I'd say, and I'll keep it to 3, was around culture. And as a CEO, this isn't an HR thing. This is a you thing. You set the tone in the organization. People, when I first joined Vendavo, somebody asked a question like in town hall day 1, something to the effect of, yeah, we've seen stuff before. Like, why do we think it should be different? And why should we trust you? And my answer to them was, you shouldn't. You should watch what I do over the next span of time and make your own mind up. So culture within Vendavo, it was one of the first things that I spent time on, values and leadership tenets. And I'll put the values aside for a second and I'll talk about leadership tenets. And this is the values apply to everybody. Leadership tenets are about the level up to say, for our leaders, what code do they need to live by? And going through and spending time with this, originally it wasn't supposed to be an acronym, but it ended up being an acronym, which is great. Growth mindset. People in a scale up, you've got to be about adaptive challenges, not just, hey, we do the same thing that we've always done and hope for better results. So that's growth mindset. The second piece is around results, but the asterisk around in a constrained environment. Anybody can do wonders with a blank checkbook. If you're a day late, $1 short, and you got to get creative, like people that can roll with that and that have resiliency. The third one, the E, is around energy and not being the other end of that, which is an energy vampire or an Eeyore. The A is around amplifying culture. So this can't just be a poster on a wall or something that the CEO is ranting about, but for leaders, they are walking the walk when no one's looking. And then the last piece around teams and being collaborative and celebrating wins. And as you're doing a scale up, not everything's going to be a win, and there's going to be some rough day, but people that really get amplified around bringing people together and celebrating the success that you have on the way, that's going to lead to more success. So those would be the three big things that I'd call.
That's awesome. Wins and lessons learned. And for the ones who are still guessing, what is the V2 MOM framework from Mark Benioff?
Yeah.
So, vision. Yeah, you can go. Yeah, feel free.
Values, methods, obstacles, and measures. So vision, what is our shot? What do we want to be when we grow up? Values, piece that I walked through. Methods, this is where the rubber really hits the road. What are the things that you're going to do and operationalize and break down into smaller chunks and mobilize the organization around? Obstacles, it's not just, hey, these are the things in our way, but here's what we're going to do about them. And the last piece around measures. And this was one of the things that coming into Vendavo or other organizations that I've gone into, there's a false sense of security around, hey, we have 117 different measures, which means nothing gets really measured. For us, it's a simple set. Starts with employee NPS, then goes to ARR pipe, then goes to ARR booking, then goes to ARR actual, and then goes to net revenue retention and EBITDA. And all of the methods connect to those measures. And it's been a really helpful tool in going through and making organizational decisions to say, hey, if you can't connect to those, let's have a chat around why we're doing what we're doing that isn't aligned. And in some cases, it was a good educational thing to say, hey, there's a really good reason. You might not see the connection at first, but there is, and we need to take this seriously versus, no, we need to stop doing this thing or start doing something else.
That's a very good point. I kind of have a similar framework and methodology that combines team, clarity of vision, and execution. And I think one of the mistakes, and you talked about it, that a lot of leadership teams do is to co-define OKRs before having clear the priorities and the vision, or what I call even the smart vision or the vision reverse engineering exercise. Start with the next 3 years. That is a timeline that creates a bit of tension. It's still a little bit more long-term, not really short-term, and then come to the present and understand, in order to get there in 3 years, what do I need to do next year and what I need to do this quarter in order to feed next year and to feed the next 3 years. And that's when you finally get into those overall, what I call almost vision metrics, others would call North Star metrics, or the metrics of the V2 MOM. And then that's when we start defining the company OKRs that might be a little bit more detailed, more metrics, and then we start the cascading to the rest of the organization, which everything needs to be connected to those North Star or vision metrics that you were talking about. Usually we go too tactical and we start defining, almost second mistake, OKRs as initiatives and not as metrics. So we want to ensure that we are moving we are getting the right outcomes. And if we can do less to get the right outcomes, the best. That's why, again, the clear priorities are so important.
Mike, that is so important what you just said, and I want to go back to it. I think so many organization and leaders get false sense of security in detail. And don't get me wrong, detail isn't important, but that mapping that you were just going through and talking about and simplifying down so it can be repeated, I think so many people miss that. And it's super important point you made.
Thank you very much. And the team component, again, you also highlighted the values and the culture, making sure that we have the right people in the right seats and that they have a strong glue. And what are the kind of attitudes that we promote? What is the kind of behaviors that we appreciate in this organization? And what is the kind of people and teams that will allow us to achieve our vision? Kind of don't think too much about the goal, think much more about who you need to become in order to achieve that kind of goal, right? And the same with teams is, what is the kind of team that achieves this kind of outlier results? It's much more about it, because if you don't put the right behaviors and the right team in front of the goals, you will never get to the goals, right? And the second thing is make them own and make them build with you. That's blueprint. If it needs to be the CEO to define everything, probably we already have something wrong in the team.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I look at, if I look at the sort of the click and double click and triple click related to methods in Vendavo, there's 4 things that I've been hammering on from day one and continuing to hammer on: people, platform, partners, and customer success. And if you would have asked me before the CEO gig, I would have said, well, it's platform, partners, customer success. But getting into this role, there's a reason I start on the people front. And it's not a kumbaya thing or a virtue signaling thing. It's a very selfish thing. And it's what if you're the only one banging the drum, there's a big problem to start with. So I view that as an ongoing thing. And we kind of broke down into 3 parts underneath there. One was around setting the values and leadership tenets, which is actually the easy part. The tough part is then once you have those locked, how does that fold into who stays, who goes, who gets promoted, and that people are walking the walk. The second piece was around the leadership function. And part of this is at an exec level, but part of this too is a program that we have called Extended Leadership Team, which is pulling people out from circulation within the company, kind of like a SWAT team, and having them focus on mission critical, time-sensitive, cross-functional stuff that develops them as leaders and kind of works muscles that they might not have been exposed to before. And then the last piece is around destination of choice. And this is not hey, we had a meeting and we decided we're a destination of choice. This is something that's a combination of the first 2 pieces that I mentioned of like the values and tenets and the leaders. And it's something ongoing. You got to earn every day. People that are hitters and top employees, they have choices. And if you're not looking out for them and actively earn it every day, they'll go someplace where somebody does that for them.
Absolutely. And you were talking about people, platform, and CS, and you started with people, right? Do you still want to go through platform and CS?
I can give you at a high level the other ones. So Vendavo, I think historically has had a great set of applications that have solved great business problems. I think the big opportunity going forward, and there's a deliberate reason why I use the term commercial operating system, not, best CPQ app or best rebates, or best whatever, but something that is an indispensable piece of the fabric of how companies make commercial decisions. So so what are some of the attributes of that? Something that scales to the moon because it's, large manufacturers and distributors, something that has buildable components that are integrated, something with quick time to value, something that we can iterate and innovate on top of very rapidly. There's some great stuff that Vendavo has in place, but there's also some work that we have to do there. On the partner front, if you look at every great SaaS company that's scaled up, partner is a huge part of that equation. So we're not confused. Vendavo is not an application company or a services company. We are a SaaS, partner-led SaaS platform play. So BSIs, boutique consulting firms, they give us way more reach and amplitude than we'd have on our own. So a lot of that is being super clear on ICP, super clear on sales plays and where you start and the partner ends, and making sure that ecosystem is thriving. And on the customer success front, make no mistake about it. Like, we are not in the software business. We are in the rentals business. And unless you have smiling, happy tenants, it's all for nothing. So the finish line, and this is a big mentality change and cultural change is not because we built a great product and we threw it over the wall, or we sold a deal and then we walk away, or we deliver a project and then we're done with it. These smiling customers that's winning, they're getting boatloads of money off our technology and they're getting promoted and they're a hero related to it. So underneath each of those 4 areas, there's a laundry list of stuff that hits within other teams, but it's a lot easier to articulate to say, hey, you don't have to sit in an 8-hour meeting. People, platform, partners, customer success. If we nail those, we're going to win.
Yeah. People, platform, partners, and CS. I missed the partners bit when I was mentioning it.
And so
very good.
Well, one piece of that too. So somebody might look at that and go, well, yeah, I don't do stuff in the partner realm, or I don't do this. We're doing these other places. There's other stuff that we end up doing as well. However, the top priority, the top imperative, hey, why are we throwing money at a particular place? That's our first line. That's what gets the lion's share of the investment. That's where I spend 103% of my time on those 4 areas.
Yeah. And there is something that you mentioned that I think it's quite important, that extended leadership team or leadership program, where you kind of have SWAT teams working on cross-functional initiatives. So we are kind of almost terminating budget season, right? And typically budget season in a lot of organizations are just looking to the numbers of the previous budgets and trying to understand how can we optimize, where it should be much more about what is our 3-year strategy, what is our strategy for next year, and what are the key initiatives that we will be leveraging on. And those need to be cross-functional initiatives, and that is the difficult work. And then what is the impact that we expect from those cross-functional initiatives, and what will be the impact on the cost and on the revenue that will come from those initiatives. Probably some of them will also not have a harvesting time in 25, but only in 26. Some of them also in a bit preparing 27. But I guess that getting to those kind of not to 20 initiatives, but to those top three cross-functional initiatives, that's something that is so underestimated. Do you agree with this statement?
I totally do. And actually, right before this call, we were narrowing down what are the 2 that we're hitting in Q1 with my leadership team. And we had a healthy debate related to this. Having run these programs a bunch of different times in different companies, here's some things I've learned from that team. You've got to be really clear on what the charter is. Are they just listening and they get to hear stuff early? Are they picking up a shovel and actually doing work? Are they on the inside, the outside, and getting clear on that? Within Vendavo, it's not a passive thing where they sit back. They have shovels. They dig in on initiatives, the first piece. The second piece, being very clear, what's the scope of the project? So for us, it's got to fit within a 90-day window. The work needs to fit within a 90-day window. It needs to be time sensitive. It needs to be strategic. It needs to connect to the methods. And the reason I'm so explicit and militant about that is if you don't do it, then it runs the chance of just being a book report that no one cares about and it loses steam. Also, because this is supposed to be a leadership development opportunity for them, we want them to be in the fire and see what that's like. Way more exposure to exec leadership team. When we do the output of the projects, they're going to present to the board. So that whole thing of exposure, hey, I might think I have a good pitch and way of framing things if I'm talking to my peer, but if I got to talk to Petri Oksanen, who's super direct, man, we got to have our act together around it. And I've found it's been a great leadership development foundry to be super tight about that. And if I look at people that I've run through that program in other companies, they're, C-level execs or CEOs in other companies. Most all of them have bumped up to bigger and brighter things. And it's one of the things I feel the most proud about.
That's exactly that clarity of vision that allows people to think like CEOs, right? Because they have all the information on the table as well. And that is the kind of responsibility that they will present to the board as the real leadership team also needs to. And they need to speak the same language and leave their functional lingo and really speak business lingo. And those are the metrics that matter, we don't want to have those situations that also happen very often, where marketing is celebrating, we achieved our OKRs and our targets, we are great, but the business failed completely. The sales results and the revenue results, and we are not close to what we should. But someone is celebrating the organization. Now, how is it possible? Right?
Yeah, so that's one of the other things, and I had to learn this lesson the hard way several times, is that clarity on problem you're trying to solve up front. plus percent of the issues that I find is not being clear about that. And then folks within the company will go off and do things and then come back and it didn't move a metric. Or I thought we were solving for something else. Is it like a growth thing or a retention thing? When you're saying on the budget side of things, going through those exercises, are we just trying to find money? Or are we trying to do something structurally that will help us move faster and is going to impact cash or something else? And I found the more time you spend upstream on that, you get a radically better result. And oddly enough, in less time, because you don't have these postmortems about why didn't this happen and what's going on and people frustrated, and people feel a lot better about the outcome and the result.
It's incredible how you are also motivating me for this conversation, because it brings me back to two pillars I think that are critical for great leadership, which are the 2Ds, the D of discipline, going through those boring, mundane weekly calls where we go through the metrics and we discuss the bottlenecks and where should we work in order to unload that next wave of growth. And the second D, which is the detachment, to try new things and to kill those initiatives if they are not working, having the courage to look them in the eyes and say, we tried, we did our best, this is not the way to go, we learned something, and the next thing we will do will be this one. So also being able to balance that discipline and the detachment, the discipline of not giving up too early, but also the detachment of understanding this is not working. It was great for us to learn something. Let's change gears.
And something to celebrate on that, Mike. I think so many times people get it wrong of the afraid of failure or the afraid around the bad news. And, I'll go through and when I've had chats with candidates, and one of the questions I'll ask is, what's your biggest screw up and what'd you learn from it? And I'm looking for something, which is, are you going to Or are you going to say, hey, I never failed? Or are you going to give something about, well, I'm a perfectionist? Give me something good, because what that's showing me is you take risks. You're not afraid to fail. You have resilience. You can pick yourself up and go forward. And here's what I learned from it that makes me better in what I'm doing. And I was watching this interview with Sam Altman where he was talking about the difference between companies that really make it and the ones that don't. And he was talking about resilience. And that if you go in with really high expectations and you've never failed and everything's been handed to you, you're not going to get through. And he was talking in the sense of startups, but it absolutely applies to scale-ups. You're breaking stuff if you're doing it right. You're breaking stuff. You're doing new things. You're doing scary things outside your comfort zone. And so that resilience is a big key.
So we talked a bit about clarity, also about execution, also about culture. So we know that one of the most important jobs of any leader, but especially of the CEO, is to, build or train or coach that high-performing team, and sometimes even to just be humble and be a member of the team and also be coached in certain areas by that team. And also it's inevitable to talk about this. There is times that you need to take the difficult call of bringing new people, letting people go. And sometimes I feel it is clear when there is no personality chemistry, we need to change something about the team. Even if we have sometimes the right professionals in place, if there is no chemistry, if the team doesn't come together well, if we are not really a high-performing team, it will be very difficult to win. And I think we all, if we ask what has been the team that you most enjoyed working with, I think all of us quickly go to a certain place and space where we were really, really happy. And hopefully it is today that we are still being very happy with that team. But there is something special about being a part of amazing teams where we feel small around them and at the same time giants around them. So there is a very nice quote about that I can't replicate now. What has been your thoughts about building teams and the teams for executing that vision, right? And co-creating that vision?
So a few different things. The first one is being very clear and unapologetic on a leadership perspective, that great thing that I ran through. What is your stake in the ground? And as a CEO, you are creating that culture. You are setting it on, hey, it's this. And then using it as a metric. So saying, look, there are no bad people. It's just you don't have a growth mindset. Or it's not whether I like you or not. You don't have a growth mindset. Or, yeah, you might get results, but this is a constrained environment and you're super frustrated and you're being an energy vampire. And that's why, not that you're a bad person. So one on
right.
the cultural front. The second one, there's a book called Six Types of, and I swear I'm not the guy who drops books, but like Six Types of Working Genius, Patrick Lencioni. And I love his style of writing because it's super digestible. But what he was going through and saying is, look, there's 6 things, and the acronym is WIDGET. It's like wonder, innovation, discernment, galvanizing. I forget what E is, and then one is tenacity. And it says, look, for any person, I don't care who you are, there's 2 things you're awesome at, 2 things you suck at, and there's 2 things that you can do, but eventually it's going to drain you. And so in team composition, actually having everybody with the same superpower is not a good thing. We ended up doing an exercise in my last company around this, and we looked at it and going, God, I didn't plan it this way, but each one of our leadership team members had different superpowers. And I was kind of scratching my head of like, why are we able to get done what we got done so quickly? And it was because we all brought something different to the table. That was counterintuitive for me earlier in my career, where I wanted to get, all my friends like sounded like me, thought like me, whatever else. And like, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And if I am, I'm in the wrong room. Like I need people around that are going to push, test, bring other things to the table. So those are 2 big things that I'd go through and call out. And maybe the third one is a little bit of empathy goes a long way. And it's investment to have to go through and really connect deeply with people where they feel psychologically safe enough to open up. Once you have that, and you understand the why a little bit more about people's quirks or, what they're good at, it really helps on the outcome perspective.
So 7 months as a CEO, you went through the first 90 days, second quarter has gone by, currently on your third quarter, and first 12 months, results need to be there, right? So this is how brutal it is to be in the CEO seats. In front of the board is, okay, nice, first 90 days, well done. I like your plan. Now, second year, we want to see results, and probably already this year, or at least feel that we are going the right direction. Of course, the great boards will also support the CEO and feel that we are also here for you and to support you. And it's also our responsibility to make you successful and to set up you for success. But how is it being the first year and going through? Because the time goes by very quickly. I remember everyone, quarters are 13 weeks, right? So, and 2 sets of 13 weeks and or 4 sets, they go really, really quick if we don't leverage well our time.
Yeah. So
sorry about the tricky question.
One of the biggest gifts that I got, and I didn't realize it at the time, was being able to see what happened to 2 first-time CEOs that got clipped in 8 months after they started. Sharp guys, went to great schools, great pedigrees, great people, just didn't work out. And the biggest lesson that I turned from that is, doesn't matter how much people are smiling and good and get acclimated. Vendavo, the clock started way before I got there. And I need to run faster and harder than everybody and stay 2 and 3 steps ahead. By the time the board asks for something, it's too late. Really, it is. So thinking about those things of like the people, platform, partner, customer success, and what it takes to get those things rolling, going through, doing the homework, failing fast, like all of that stuff. Because you mentioned it earlier, there's the sprint for the current quarter, which yes, you need to go through and optimize that. But if you're not building your business 2-3 steps ahead of where customers are asking for it or board or investors are asking for it, really you're going to be in trouble. And it's unfortunate to see, because by the time you start to see the symptom, in a lot of cases, it's too late to do something about it. Because really, to really dig in and understand a problem and get a good solution to it and fail a few times and get traction and iterate and get that flywheel moving, it takes time. So that's the biggest thing for me going in, is leveraging that gift of like roll. I started at Vendavo 3 weeks before I actually started, driving the team crazy internally on like just pushing. And that's one of the balance things as a CEO that you need to keep in mind. It is a constant balance and a fine line between sense of urgency, purpose, clarity, push, and burning people out. And it's situational and a fine line, but really as a CEO, I think that is the biggest challenge to go through and navigate.
And you are doing great, Eric. Really, really excited about your next steps and what you did so far. And I think we just described what I call the midterm gap, right? So you have leadership teams that are very good in the short term. Some of them who are a little bit more visionary, who can be able to be good in the short term and in the long term, but they quickly will fail at a certain point because they are not working on the midterm. And it will get to a moment that the short term will not be enough to get into the short term will be too close to the midterm and will not be able to produce the results in one quarter if you are not working ahead of it. And time is flying when we are having great conversations. I hope that our listeners are feeling the same excitement and energy. We are not being energy vampires here. We hope we are giving you a lot of energy back and all good things. The blessing it is to lead an organization, and how grateful we are for those challenges and for supporting those. That's it. Any final message that you'd like to share with other CEOs, other future CEOs that are going through the same challenges?
I guess the only thing I'd say is you've got company. You've got several people in the same boat as you, several people that are dealing with the same challenges and that want to help. Reach out. The conversations you and I have had, Mike, before this, for me, very helpful, very cathartic. It's like, hey, you're not the only one that's here. Really reach out to that. And especially for first-time CEOs, your networks are probably not, 20 other CEOs. They're people in whatever functional realm that you've been in. There's tons of networking groups that you can get into around that. I would highly encourage. And I've found everybody I've reached out to has been hyper responsive and helpful because they've been in the same spot before too, and they want to pay it forward.
Absolutely. Eric, thanks so much. It was so inspiring to have you on the show. We wish you all the best, and you are always welcome back to share your next chapters.
I'll take you up on that. Really enjoyed this, Mike. Great talking with you.
And thank you to the community as well. We keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life a little bit easier as you scale up your company. See you soon and keep scaling.